Peace and blessings, world. E-Cushion is here, tapping in from the studio here in North Carolina. This is lesson 7 of NGO Radio Terra's free lessons for all ages and all levels, right here on their YouTube channel. So please like, subscribe, and keep on coming back weekly for all of us educators. Great content that we're bringing to the world, and loving the fact that we get to bring this knowledge that we have amassed over our professional careers to your screen and into your life. So we are talking about the mental art of drumming, and these are things that I have gleaned from the professionals I've worked with, things that I have gone through, concepts that I've nabbed from different mentors, and I'm going to try and summarize them and make them digestible here within the next couple minutes. This stuff can be used for any walk of life and any discipline and any medium of creativity. It's just here we're talking about it from a drummer perspective, so you can use your imagination, and feel free to email me at ecushionist@gmail.com. The first concept I want to talk about is performance equals potential minus self-interference. I'll say that again. Performance equals potential minus self-interference. I can't tell you how many times I have walked off of a gig and thought I could have done so much better, but didn't know why or how I could fix it. This was before I started recording everything. And believe me, that has also tremendously helped me keep track of my progress, and has thus helped my mental health in the process of growing and practicing as a musician. But until I learned this really simple but valuable equation, which is performance equals potential minus self-interference, I was struggling and couldn't really figure it out. This equation is so valuable because it really lets us see that, wow, our performance can be the greatest performance in the world as long as we nurture that potential that we have within us, which hasn't maybe arrived yet in the musical moment. And as long as there's no self-interference, we can actually access the highest part of our artistic potential. So that's what that means to me. The more I practice that, the more success I have at it. And I think that with all of these concepts, and just like with anything, the more you practice it the right way, the more it shows up the right way when it comes time to perform. The key to being confident and supportive is your positive self-talk and preparation. I think that preparation and positive self-talk go hand in hand, because we know that if you're not prepared, it doesn't matter how great you naturally are, you might very well mess up the whole opportunity because you weren't prepared, and then because it didn't sound good, you don't feel great about yourself, and thus could create a potential spiral of not good self-talk. And of course, this isn't one size fits everybody, and everybody's capacity for grasping this concept and for wanting to be better at it and kinder to themselves is different. But what I will say is that it comes again with practicing the art of talking to yourself and finding moments in each part of your day to test that out on yourself. And far be it from me, as I am not a health professional, to say that it should be easy to get this. But let's try, because it has improved my musicianship so much to have increased my positive self-talk, which has allowed me to feel a certain way to the musicians that I'm playing for. You know, you want to understand where your self-talk is coming from. You want to understand some of the memories or some of the traumas that are feeding into that. So spend some time in meditating what some of that can be, and see if you can undo it and walk yourself through better ways of looking at yourself. Things that ring true to you. Even if it's only 2 things that are positive, that ring true to you, do that. And accept those things about yourself as true. 2 positive things out of 10 things, but nurture those 2 positive things, and you'll start to see your garden of positive mental self-talk grow into an abundant forest of mental health, of positive and good mental health. Years ago, I had an experience with a band leader who was encouraging me to explore why it was that I felt that I wasn't good enough to be in the band. Despite that I was there for 2 years already, why was it that something was evident that I didn't feel comfortable or that I didn't feel worthy, right? And that was part of my negative self-talk spiral, was that I didn't feel worthy, and somehow I had stumbled my way into this particular situation, and that I was a fake waiting to be found out. And I think that that's called imposter syndrome. And again, it's just a symptom of this negative self-talk spiral that I was getting myself into. But I got a hold of it. And after that situation ended, partially because within the time frame of that professional relationship, I hadn't gotten it together, I had to look at myself. Part of what I wasn't prepared to do, which is the next thing I'm talking about, I'm going to talk about within that professional situation, was that the environments were so different that I was playing in, that I wasn't necessarily prepared to access all of my professional abilities, because I was uncomfortable, because it was too hot, because it was too cold, because I couldn't hear well enough, because there was too much natural reverb within this massive space. It was because I didn't have enough practice creating my own strength in internal time and tempo, that the slightest fluctuation in time from another musician might make me interpret the whole thing wrong. So I started practicing the environment. My remedy for that is, if you haven't learned how to play in a super hot environment, put on 5 jackets and do the whole set twice. It sounds insane, but it's going to allow you to feel what it's like to overheat before you find yourself in a professional situation where you're going to be having your butt shown out there in front of 10,000 people because your stick slipped, because your hands are super sweaty, and you hadn't experienced what it was like to have to think quickly while you're overheating in front of 10,000 people and still play great. Put yourself in the scenario as much as you possibly can so that you're ready for it when you get there. For instance, if you have just the slightest amount of click, follow along to the music and be good, then I would suggest putting on a vacuum, putting on the TV as loud as possible, putting on the radio, putting on a bunch of distractions, and then play your whole set down with the click track a little bit lower, and then find yourself in the moment that you may have to experience on stage. But this time you'll know what it was like to have to take yourself through the mental exercise of it and actually win at the end. So we want to practice our awareness of all of these things. You want to practice your awareness of your mental self-talk. You want to practice your awareness of your environments and the environments that you can find yourself playing in. You want to practice your awareness of all these things that affect us, so that you can continue to keep tabs on yourself, and you can recognize when you aren't making those steps in growth, and you can recognize when you are. But being aware is the first step towards growth in any medium. I have a structure and I have a process, and that is very much all about keeping a fine balance between endurance and technical exercises, reading and professional obligations like sound design and studying charts. And then there's also the fun that I need to have to explore my creativity, so that I can take all of these ideas and techniques and endurance things into the actual field of music and fun and experimentalism, and ultimately hone a full concept, something that can work. You don't want to become dull through all work and no play. And this is called playing the drums. We do want to work in the field of drumming, but make sure that you keep a little bit of play in your particular practice regimen so that you can stay connected to the child and you stay connected to the reason why you do this that isn't just about money, the reason why you do this that feeds your soul. The closer we can stay to the spark of our inner child's wonderment with music, I find the closer we are to our purpose, and thus we'll be able to maybe not tolerate, but we will be able to survive some of the torturous moments that come with being a professional musician. Discipline is really important, and I think that if we can find some discipline in how we treat our bodies, we will find so much more mental health, because we won't be constantly thinking about our backs, and we won't be constantly worried about how we're going to feel when we get to the gig, minus the gig, right? This is that self-interference that we're talking about. A way that we can eradicate self-interference as drummers is by being the healthiest physical body possible. The drumming arts are built off of using the mechanics of our limbs in really incredibly vast, diverse, and polyrhythmic ways. So it's super important that our bodies work. It's super important that we have good technique when it comes to bending down and picking things up and moving gear. It's really, really important that we know supplements to take, that we know what kind of carbs to eat and when to eat them. It's important that we stretch. It's important as drummers that we know what happens to us after 10 o'clock at night when we eat a certain food. It's really important that we be as close to knowing our bodies as possible. And this is for everybody in the world through all mediums and all walks of life. But as drummers, it's really, really massively important that we have as little physical self-interference as possible. Yoga really works. Finding supplements that work for your whole system. Sleeping is amazing. Getting sleep is super crucial and allows me to download all of the information that I intake during the day, especially if I'm studying for a gig, especially if I have a really important performance, especially if I'm learning a transcription, a drum solo that I'd like to commit to memory, working through it every day in the practice room, but then having some good sleep after that or taking a nap will help ingrain some of that information, and then I'll wake up much clearer and much more able to access that in my brain. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about as drummers is how important it is for us to be great timekeepers. While we're getting our chops together and our fills together and our dynamics, and while we're getting our fills and while we're getting all the fun stuff together, remember that groove is king.
Remember that groove is king.
And what we do before anything else is make it feel good. In order to make it feel good, you've got to have good time. And in order to have good time, we've got to know the mental and the physical aspects of how to achieve that. What is good time? It's something that I've been seeking an answer to my whole career, and very few professionals could actually tell me what it is. So many people said, you just feel it, or come on, Matt, you know. Well, I didn't feel like I could really define what it was and how to do it. So what I've come to over these years is there's a couple things. We can have great natural time by listening to how we sound. That means to me creating a note and listening to its decay. If I speed that up 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, we start to get and if I'm truly listening to how that sounds, to develop pretty decent natural time just by listening to how I sound, how the beginning and the end of this thing that I'm doing sounds. But then there's having, like metronomic time and playing to a click track. And there's a certain physical thing that I have to do in order to make that happen. And that physical thing is my kick drum hitting perfectly with each quarter note in the click track, or whatever the pattern is, hitting perfectly with that pattern and in the center of it. One of the things I think about mentally to get myself there is if I'm on a boat and I'm getting seasick, the only way that I can not be seasick is if I focus on one point on that horizon. If I focus on one point on that horizon, I know that I can keep myself in an equilibrium that is very much physically like this. If it goes like this, I get sick. So if I take my eye off that horizon, and if I take my focus off the thing at hand, which in drumming terms would be hitting the center of every single beat in the pattern that you're playing to on a click track, then you can start to envision how to access that type of mental focus. If I remember that the stake of me losing focus on the horizon is me throwing up all over myself on a boat, then it's equivalent to if I'm playing a gig and I'm playing with a click track and I take my focus off of being in the center of every single one of those beats, the equivalent of me throwing up all over myself would be playing out of time, playing out of pocket, and making the groove feel shitty. And that can land you in a hot seat professionally. You don't want to be there. So it's really important that you come up with a mental, physical vision for how you can imagine the way that you can reference point what it's like to achieve success somewhere in life and attach that to your drumming world. In this particular case, success was not throwing up all over myself on a boat. And I was able to synthesize that type of focus and that type of importance into keeping focus, playing with a click track, and being so aware that it's a very, very, very small margin of error when you're playing to a click track and you want to blend with a lot of other percussion parts. Lastly, I want to talk about practicing reinforcement of all of these concepts. Reinforce how important it is for yourself to talk nicely to yourself, but also reinforce how important it is to get there. You need to be prepared. Reinforce what it's like to try and take self-interference out of any of your potential. What does that mean to you? Be aware of that. Reinforce practicing great time, and reinforce practicing endurance, but also reinforce making sure that you have fun when you do your studies and when you do your practice. This is also about work, but it's also about enjoying being a creative because you chose to do this. If this isn't your day job, it's still all about making sure that we are coming to the drums with the purest intention. Another thing I do want to talk about is if you get burnt out on the mental side of drumming, try and put on a TV show, pull out your practice pad, and start working on some endurance exercises. The truth of the matter is that drumming is just as physical as it is mental. I came into the game as a very mental drummer. And what I had to understand about myself was that in order for me to be a more well-rounded musician, I had to adopt a more physical approach. I had to get more endurance. In order for me to have better time, mentally I knew what it was, but physically I needed to get to a place where my muscles would just do it. If you get burnt out on a creative wavelength, try and, like I said, do something that's relatively mindless, like watching TV or listening to an audiobook or something like that, and just put your pad in front of you and put your sticks in your hand or put your pedals on your feet and start to play some rudiments. Start to do some things that are important and will be productive for your drumming life and might even help you blow off some steam mentally, because it's sort of like getting in the gym. These endurance exercises do up your heart rate. They do get you breathing harder, and they might even help you break a sweat. It's really important that we understand that that is part of what it is that we do, is we got to get physical as much as we got to be mental about it. I hope that this has been helpful, and I hope that I can continue to find even better ways to articulate these thoughts, because like I said, I'm coming off the dome. I'm here in the studio, and we didn't rehearse this. This is an improvised experience. Like I said, I had a couple little notes here, but they're just reference points. Hope I didn't have too many likes and ums. Love you guys. Appreciate your guys' attention. Like and subscribe. This is Ecussionist here with NGO Radio Terras. Free lessons for all ages, all levels. This is Lesson 7, The Mental Art of Drumming.